Welcome to the next video in this series where we're assembling an IMSAI 8080 CPA Rev4 kit. In this video, we're going to do some initial testing, so let's dive in. So there are some basic validations we can do with the build at this point. In the photos here, you'll see that there's only an MPU card. It's the card here sitting behind the CPA. You really can't see much of it on camera. The data cable's plugged in. That goes from the MPU card that we've soldered into the CPA panel down here. I've got the momentary contact switches in place. I know that this is examine, deposit, reset, run, stop. I know what they are. Just watch the positions I click on here. I'm going to apply power to the system. It should come up. This is the stop light. The machine is stopped. If I click run, I should see the run LED come on, which it did here. And I can see there's activity out here. This is the address bus, and the CPU is just looping over, in this case, FFs in memory. I think that's a reset. It's one of the reset vectors, but the machine's jumping up and down enough to be able to see these LEDs do something. So we know we can run it. I'm going to push down on the switch right here to stop it. Stop LED has come on. So I do have control, run and stop, and you can see the LEDs changing. Be careful here because there's no support behind the board. I could push it flush up against the sheet metal. We don't want to do that. We have the examine switch here. If I click that examine switch up, it should load the entire address bus with ones. It'll load ones because there's no address data switches installed. And so without the switches, those pins float up to a 1. So examine should, as it did there, light up all of the address LEDs. We expected to see those change. Examine next should increment this address. And this is address FFFF. And if we increment it by 1, it'll roll around to 0. So the first examine next should turn all 16 of these LEDs off. And it does. The next examine next will add 1, so this LED should come on. The next one should add another 1, so 2 here should come on and 1 should go off. And we can see that we're stepping through addresses correctly here. We're actually getting a nice increment as we expect. If I do a regular examine again, it'll read the switches. They're all open. All the LEDs come on, and examine next will bring us back around to that same loop. That's expected behavior. That tells me a good chunk of the logic over here is working. Run, stop. This is deposit. I'm going to go ahead and examine to that address FFFF, and I'm going to hit the deposit switch here, and nothing should happen, and that's expected. But if I do deposit next, we should see the addresses, all those LEDs go off, and we do. And that's because deposit next said increment the address. So address FFFF plus 1 becomes 0000. Another deposit next should light this LED here, and another one here, and it should become a binary up count. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. And if you wanted to click this 65,000 times, you could bring that all the way back around to all ones. So that's a good sign. We've got reset here in the middle, and if I push reset up, I should see all these LEDs come on, and I do. When reset's up, all the LEDs here light, and these 4 over here will all be off on reset. So that's expected behavior. So that tells me the basic functions these switches do are working and working correctly. The next thing I can do here is I've got a little pair of tweezers here. They've got metal contacts. You need to be careful doing this and be delicate. If I take the tweezers and I take the two top holes in this switch position and I connect them together and I do an examine, I should see that LED off and all the others on. I can then come over to this switch position and connect those 2 top pads together and do an examine again. This LED is now off. If I come around here and on the 3rd switch, we'll see that LED light and this one go off on an examine. So we know that those 3 switch positions work. That one works. That one works. That one works. Be careful here not to poke all the way through and touch the sheet metal on the back. You need to be just in far enough to get contact on the two center holes. And again, everybody here is working exactly as I would expect. The position where I take those two top pins. Okay, that happens, and that was just me introducing noise onto the machine. That happens when I touch the center pin sometimes. First, just depending on the order, that does happen occasionally. You can ignore that, reset the machine, and try again. Examine. That's just really because I'm touching metal tweezers, and there's a lot of 60 hertz noise in the room. I introduce enough noise into the system to cause an instability, and it caused the system to kick in and run. Like I said, that was expected. It's happened several times here. Just ignore it. We can see that position works. We can see that position works. Also, just notice I've got my fingers touching the sheet metal over here at all times while I'm handling this, so I'm not introducing static electricity in here and zapping something. I've always got fingers over here on that sheet metal, and that's intentional. That position works. That position works. And that position works. So testing all 16 of those positions has tested a bunch of the logic down here as well. It's able to read the switch positions. It's able to set the address bus to what's on those switches. That's a good sign. This looks to me like to be, it's a fully functional CPA panel. Everything worked as expected. We had that one random where it went off and ran, and I had to stop it. So not a huge deal unless that's happening every time you touch, and then maybe it's a problem. Keep fingers in contact with the sheet metal case. There's no other cards in this machine except for the MPU-A card, which has got the 8080 processor and the CPA panel. Of course, it's in a back plane, and there is some switching power supplies hiding back here to power the system up. So really, I'm satisfied at this point with this testing. I can go ahead and install these 16 switches over here and come back and actually test the panel a little bit deeper. If you leave other cards in the machine, and I've experienced this, you've got other boards in there, you may see on reset that one or more of these LEDs doesn't light up in this row right here. I've got one card that's especially bad for this, and in this state with that one card in, some of these LEDs don't light up. And it's just a weird interaction with that card. It's an S100 bus weirdness that happens. All the cards are stripped out in this case. So I have a pure MPU CPU-A combination with nothing else. So very happy. On reset, I'll mention it again, all these LEDs should go off. There's really only ever one lit here at the moment, and that's stop. Run comes on. We see address trickery happening. Really, that's all the testing we can do here, but it's a significant amount of testing. If you have a machine you can get this into where you can do this testing, I recommend it as long as you're really careful. Stay grounded. Don't push in too deep with the tweezers. Gentle contact. It doesn't need to be super, super snug, and because once these additional switches are in place, you can see that this entire row of logic here gets covered up, and it's really hard to come back and troubleshoot. If you needed to get contact on one of the low pins down here, it's impossible with the switches in place. You have to go to the back of the board. So if you got a machine that you can do this in, awesome, do it. If you don't, inspect every solder joint, inspect every component for orientation, inspect every resistor, inspect everything you can, walk away and come back the next day and do the inspection fully again. Give yourself every opportunity of having it operate before you commit and solder those switches in. So really, I think that covers what I wanted to do here at this test point. Don't have anything else to say. We'll talk soon. Well, I appreciate your watching the video. A like or subscription is always nice. Comments, feedback, those kind of things. I try to read everything that's posted. I think in the next video, we'll be soldering up the rest of the switches. So I hope to see you in that video.